name is Rebekah Hargrove. Today we'll be discussing constitutional rights within disaster policies. In this discussion, we will cover Articles 1, 3, and 6 of the Constitution, as well as Amendments 1, 2, 6, and 10. We will go over the disaster principles laid out by the American Bar Association, and lastly, cover some of the specific instances where the Constitution was violated during or due to disasters. Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution describes the use of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is essentially an obligation that a person who is under arrest be brought before a judge to either secure the person's release or find lawful grounds to detain the person. Article 1, Section 9 states that habeas corpus is required unless the public safety depends upon its suspension, specifically in cases of rebellion or invasion. Article 3, Section 2 describes the constitutional right to appear before a jury for all crimes with the exception of impeachment. It also states that the trial must be held in the state where the crime was committed, unless the crime was not committed in any state. This can pose an issue when disasters affect entire states and can conflict with the right to a speedy trial, which we will cover when we go over the amendments. Article 6 plainly states that our elected political figures, representatives, and executive and judicial officers uphold the Constitution at all times. This affirmation is bound by oath, and it is a crime to break such an oath. When constitutional rights are violated during disasters, these figures and officials are not only breaching that right, but are also violating Article 6, which requires them to uphold the very rights they are infringing upon. Here we get into the amendments. We are all familiar with Amendment 1, otherwise known as our freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, and the freedom to peacefully assemble and protest. This amendment is essential in supporting the media and the distribution of information. Without it, we would have a very different milling and keynoting process, and we would not be able to speak our voices and opinions on how to fix any disaster situation. The media would no longer be a source of information for us, and we would be solely reliant on the information authorities wish to tell us. Emergency managers and officials need to respect this amendment because it is the way we find out how the public feels and what needs to be done to alleviate their suffering. The Second Amendment states that every state is entitled to a well-regulated militia and gives individuals the right to bear arms, with arms being in reference to firearms such as handguns, rifles, and shotguns. This constitutional right has been repeatedly infringed upon, especially in disasters. During a situation when authorities cannot provide law enforcement, such as with Hurricane Katrina, law-abiding individuals with firearms become a preventative measure against crime and personal injury. With looting and rioting behaviors appearing in the aftermath of a disaster, every American has the right to defend his or herself per the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment specifically states that it shall not be infringed upon, therefore disallowing the attempt to seize firearms from citizens in any scenario except for criminal investigations. Amendment 6 gives us the right to a fair, speedy, and public trial. This right can often be violated in times of disaster when destruction takes priority. This situation can cause many debates and arguments because many feel that the devastation and victims of disasters take priority over criminals wishing to exercise their constitutional right. The judicial system can oftentimes be put on hold in order to relieve the devastation and focus on recovery. While victims of a disaster should take priority, the state still needs to find a way to continue upholding the Sixth Amendment rights of all those who are awaiting trial. The 10th Amendment quite simply gives power to the states. This is an important factor in our preferred bottom-up implementation pattern for our national response framework. The American Bar Association has 12 major principles that guide the rule of law in a major disaster. In essence, these principles require that the law is preserved, the Constitution is respected, and fair treatment is offered to those who are affected by disaster. The American Bar Association also touches on the planning process, specifically how the preservation of the law can only occur when cooperative and proactive planning occurs. This means that local, state, and federal governments, along with private, nonprofit, and charity organizations, need to plan together in order to have the most effective response preparation. The American Bar Association offers these principles in order to guide behaviors in accordance with the Constitution during any emergency situation. Here are specific instances of constitutional violations. In the case of Hurricane Katrina, the Second Amendment was consistently violated when authorities repeatedly attempted and succeeded in the seizure of personal firearms without due cause. The National Rifle Association filed a lawsuit, which was later settled, because authorities confiscated over 1,000 firearms that were not a part of any criminal investigation, thus leaving the firearm owners at the mercy of gangs, looters, and the abundance of criminal activity that occurred in the aftermath of Katrina. In the aftermath of the 9/11 terror attacks, many people suspected of terrorist activities were not given a fair, speedy, or public trial. While their Sixth Amendment rights were infringed upon, the discussion of public safety versus privacy and constitutional rights came about and gained momentum. To this day, we are still debating the effects of safety versus freedom. This is a discussion that will take years to solve and that could permanently change our country's rights and liberties. Although disasters often lead to the violation of constitutional rights, there are still times when those rights are upheld. In this instance, with Hurricane Katrina, CNN filed a lawsuit when authorities wanted to control the flow of information from media to the public. Eventually, the media was allowed to take pictures of Katrina victims' bodies regardless of how gruesome. These images became the backbone of the public support to encourage policy change. Without them, many people may not understand the vast amounts of damage Katrina caused and the government's failed response to the situation. Information and knowledge promote change, and in a country so large, we need the media to report what they see so we can all understand the effects and push policies before the policy window closes. If you wish to read more about this topic, please see the reference section. Thank you for taking the time to watch, and I look forward to any questions, comments, and discussions.
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend